what we're going to be diving into tonight is, to sort of paraphrase the old, I forget, it was one of the funk songs from the 70s, shamanism, what it is and what it is good for. And then an introduction into the Be Your Own Shamanism course, which you'll be doing. I'm Andrew Renievich, and I'm a shamanic healer and a psychotherapist. I run workshops and teach and write here in Chelsea, where I've been living and practicing for the last 5 years. And I started this journey circle from my own experience with shamanism and out of sort of a gratitude for the difference it's made for me in my life. And the heart of the work that we're going to be doing here, whether it's an evening like tonight or an all-day thing or a several-week course, is helping people become their own shaman, which sort of raises the question, well, what's it mean to be a shaman? And why would you want to become one? And we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes. But first, let me just talk a little bit about what the evening is going to be organized. And if you have any question in particular, anything about your own experience or situation that you want addressed, please go ahead and type it in so I can kind of shape what I say around that. So what we're going to be covering tonight is, why be your own shaman? And the kind of how and why of shamanism in the sense of how I got involved in this work. Then, what is shamanism? Who are shamans? What's the nature of shamanic healing? What does it mean to work with spirit helpers? How it is that we take a shamanic journey. The last time I did this, the people were set up, a number of things. Break down the limitations they have. Feel more self-confident. Wanting to know more about themselves. Am I putting myself to my sort of soul's best use? Am I in service and doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Knowing about finding my direction. Someone who'd come to a soul contract relationship said, the workshop was good, but it wasn't able to do everything. And then another person just had a little bit of experience in shamanic work. They just wanted to go deeper. That makes a lot of sense. And it's really great to hear that people want to do that sort of stuff because, what I can say about this shamanic adventure is that shamanism can address and work with anything in the world, literally. I mean, it's just quite amazing. And the thing is, why not? Because we're talking about the oldest and most widely practiced form of spirituality on Earth. We're talking about a body of wisdom and experience and understanding and lore that's been discovered and used everywhere, from sea level to mountaintops, from tropical jungles and deserts to the Eskimo frozen north, for literally tens of thousands of years. And Michael Harner, who's an American anthropologist, who's worked with shamanic cultures and taught shamanism and methods for the last 40 years, has this to say. The shaman's work is very practical. It's not mysterious. They have the longest time-tested system of using the mind known to humanity. And in contrast, psychotherapy is New Age. Modern medicine is New Age. This is Stone Age. This is not new. This is tested. And in all the inhabited continents on the world, the natives have rediscovered the same principle over and over again, which is why we should pay attention, because it works. Keep practicing, and you know what you will discover. Our brains are not the biggest thing in the universe. I know this is a shock to some people, but actually there might be bigger things than the human race. And again, it's not faith, it's discovery through first-hand experience. The shamans are the people who know. The question is, so if shamans know something, what is it that they know, and why is it worth knowing? So what I can say about that is I'll talk a little bit about how I got involved in this, and how I've come to be sitting in this room talking about this stuff and doing this kind of work with people. Because to be honest, I'm probably the least likely person on the planet to discover and use shamanism. I grew up very kind of intellectual, very bookish. I was someone who, studied life, didn't really live it. I wasn't about experience. And shamanism is all about experience. And on top of that, I come from a family where people are, practical and hard-headed realists, businessmen and women, engineers, soldiers. There was no religion in my upbringing, and even less in the form of spirituality. If I follow the plan that I was, supposed to be on, I should have been a lawyer or a banker. But I had this sort of poetic and philosophical streak, and this real deep sense that the world had these bigger patterns to it, and it's sort of a big magical place. I mean, I was studying, everything I could get my hands on, mystical books and literature and poetry and philosophy, yoga, tai chi, meditation, trying to make sense of this world that I had a sense that there was more to life than what normal life had to offer and what success was supposed to be. None of that ever really made sense to me. And I always had the sense of there's something more, there's something missing. In Buddhism, there's a saying that we have two moments of enlightenment in our life. The first is when we realize we're going to die. And the second one is when you realize you're never going to die. And for me, I had an event like that. The first year I left university, I'd won a fellowship to live and travel in Greece and study Greek myths. And so it's one of the first week or so of this year-long trip, and I'm in an olive grove next to a graveyard. I'm getting ready to sleep, and my sleeping bag is rolled out on the ground between the trees. And as the sun's going down, the olive trees, limbs and leaves are blurring into inky black shapes that are looming around me in the darkness. And the breeze and leaves, their rustling slows down and stop, and the insects go silent. And this deep liquid stillness, soaks into the earth around me. And I slide into the sleeping bag and look up into the sky. And the sky is the darkest I've ever seen. And I see the Milky Way for the first time in my life. And it's this river of light. It's just streaming across the heavens from one end of creation to the other. And I'm looking up at it. And in just a split second, everything flips on me. And I'm feeling this sort of immense space. And I'm not lying on the earth now, looking up, but I'm hanging over an abyss, looking down into the depths of the universe, falling away below me. And if the planet let go of me, I would have just fallen forever into nothingness and into oblivion. And I'm this tiny dust mote of awareness on this ball of rock and fire, hurtling through space with the thinnest smear of air and life nursing me and protecting me. And that ball is as meaningless and tiny in the universe as I am to the ball. And it hits me. I'm alone, and I'm going to die. And it just completely freaks me out. I mean, it was just one of the trippiest experiences of my life. And it takes me about 20 years to digest kind of the impact of that. I go off and become an architect and eventually a psychotherapist and a lot of other sort of different things. And, although I was often busy and active on the outside, I was often, feeling really confused and searching on the inside and trying to kind of put that experience, that sort of Humpty Dumpty experience, back together again and trying to understand and fit, where I fit, because I had this sense of, I lived in this big, empty, cold universe where I didn't matter and I was alone and I was going to die. And no matter what I did in terms of relationships and jobs and, stuff like that, that feeling, was there, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. And then literally about 20 years later, I had the opposite experience. I'm working with a spiritual healer. My mother died a few years before this after about 7 years of cancer. And I'd gotten so depressed I couldn't go on. I mean, my life had literally just fallen into bits, and I was putting the pieces back together again. So I'm sitting on her table one day, and then again, all of a sudden, once again, that veil drops, and the room is full of angels. I mean, every square inch of the room has an angel in it. Some of them are, not bigger than the thumb joint, and others are as tall as the room. And there's like every size in between. And there's literally hundreds of them. And I'm thinking, holy shit, it is crowded out there. And again, that just, blew my mind in the other direction, because I went from this sort of cold, empty, pitiless place to this sense of presence. So crowded, I didn't know what to do with it. And so, I had this kind of multi-year process of my mother dying and the depression, my life falling apart, and putting things back together, becoming a psychotherapist, figuring out and kind of moving through this whole depression thing, and putting my life together, or so I thought. And it was in a lot of different ways, but there was still these, weird patterns, family patterns, dramas with other people, stuff that, didn't make sense. And at the same time, I started coming across references to shamanism. I'd see something on TV over here or come across an article there. And at the time, my reaction was, well, that's primitive, tribal, Stone Age stuff. That's for guys with bones in their noses and feathers. And, it was relevant 10,000 years ago, but it doesn't make any sense anymore, unless I'm a guy living in the Amazon, which I'm not. I'm a modern guy. I do Zen, I do Buddhism, studied philosophy and science. And, that stuff it's not relevant anymore. And, boy, was I wrong. So in 2008, my life blows up again. Even though I've done these years of therapy, and I'm now a therapist, and I understand my issues, and I have all these skills, but shit was still happening. Things were still, blowing up out of the blue. And I, can't make any sense of it, and I'm sitting there wondering, well, what was that all about? And why did that happen to me? And I come across another reference to shamanism in a documentary about an American anthropologist working in Africa. And this time, though, something about it appeals to me, so I go out and I go to Watkins and get a stack of books, my approach to anything, get a book, and start reading. And in that same summer, I did the coast-to-coast walk across the top of England, walking for about 2 weeks. And I'm doing these shamanic destiny retrieval journeys, which completely changes the direction of my life. I mean, in a matter of about a dozen journeys, 5 or 6 hours worth of work, I discovered this story in my soul's history, which is about 1,000 years old, a story from a Crusader lifetime, that explains all these things that have been happening in my life, all these patterns and all this drama. But it doesn't just explain, it's not just that I find this story. I actually go into the story and work with it and change it. And as I change it, things in my life start changing. I mean, these issues and patterns that literally years and tens of thousands of dollars of conventional therapy wasn't able to touch were gone, just overnight and for good. And so, as a therapist, that really got my attention because it also mirrored stuff that I'd seen in, working with clients where, the psychological stuff just wasn't working. And there was clearly something deeper going on. So, I started working with the shaman here in London, taking different courses, studying, getting, more and more training. And I literally went further and further down the rabbit hole. And eventually I realized that this was, the work my soul came here to do, to connect with spirit and help other people connect with spirit for their own benefit and for change. So that is the underlying, purpose of the Journeying Circle and the, Be Your Own Shamanism course, which then begs the question, what's a shaman? What is shamanism? Shamanism is basically 3 things. Above all, it's a form of culture. It's the original form of culture. It's the form of culture that we all come from. Because if you go back far enough in time and in space, you'll come to a time and a place when your ancestors lived in a universe that's alive, where there's spirit in everything, and everything is connected, everything is dancing, everything is talking and communicating, and it's the fabric and the weave of life. And in this form of culture, they recognize and they know, as Michael Harner said, we are not alone, that we are in fact living in a universe that is vast and rich and full of patterns and full of energy and full of wisdom and full of intelligence and compassion. And then from that awareness and from that understanding comes methods and practices, methods for communicating with what they call, or what we call, spirits, and with those dimensions, and practices used to keep that connection alive, to strengthen it and to work with it. And then, within those cultures, you have people whose work is to connect the spirit world with this world. And that person is the shaman. Now, or whatever name they're called in their culture, because shaman is actually just a Siberian word from one particular corner that's become used for everything. But in different times and in different places, they have different specific, cultural names. So shamanism is, this spirit-based form of culture. It's a set of methods to connect with spirit, and then in its most condensed form, it becomes the person, the shaman, who, with this connection, does mind, body, spirit healing for other people. They see into the future, they work with the weather, they find lost animals. These are all the things that they were tasked with in a traditional culture. So the question is, what does that mean for you? Or, in practical terms, what's it mean for us coming to these circles, coming to these courses? And what it means is that you're going to learn how to change your awareness, to expand your consciousness at will. And in this state of expanded consciousness, you're then going to travel to other dimensions of reality. This is what's known as journeying, where you will get information. You'll get power, you'll get answers, and you'll get healing. Now, this is something that, as I said, you go back far enough, everyone did this at one point in space and time. And there are still, cultures where people still do this on a regular basis, where it's completely normal. And it's something that, our culture remembers because, we have these stories. We have these popular stories, The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, Jack and the Beanstalk. stories of people who, discover something magical, and certainly think about, all the fairy tales, the fairy godmother. But, Alice, she follows a rabbit down a hole into another universe full of queens and flamingos and all sorts of wacky stuff. Or Jack gets this magic bean which he plants, and this vine grows up into the heavens, and he climbs and goes up there and has these adventures and discovers things and then brings treasure back. Dorothy's swept up by the tornado and carried up to, the land of Oz. And then in the formal books, in the religious traditions, you have something like Moses talking to a burning bush, Muhammad's night flight. In the Taoist sage stories, there are poems about sages and wise men going on in chariots to the dragon realms for wisdom and power, to upper realms. And then, again, in the Bible, Ezekiel's chariot and Jacob's ladder, all stories, all memories, all resonances of a time and a place where we could go elsewhere and discover things and get things. Now, there's lots of different, definitions or ways of describing what a shaman is. What I like is Michael Harner has a very simple definition. He says, people always ask him, how do you know if someone's a shaman? It's simple. Do they journey to other worlds? And do they perform miracles? And by miracles, he just means, do they get results that we can't explain? So that's what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be learning in Be Your Own Shaman, and why you might want to be a shaman or come to the circle and practice. So you're going to learn how to change your awareness when you choose to go to the upper world or the lower world, where you're going to work with a teacher that you have met and developed in each of those dimensions, and then ask for what you need, whether it's power or information, guidance, direction, and in a more sort of experience or practice state, you can ask for healing. So, are there any questions about, what's been described so far? At this point, a lot of people say things, well, wow, that sounds kind of unbelievable or amazing or, very exciting. And I agree. It is all of those things. I mean, it's initially quite unbelievable. The possibility of it sounds pretty exciting. And then as you dive into it, you discover it's really quite amazing, because our lives are, part of much, much bigger stories and patterns than we normally pay attention to. And as you step into this work, you're actually going to start stepping into other dimensions, which sort of brings up the next topic, which is, what is shamanic healing? How does that work? In the shamanic experience, spirit is the ultimate reality to everything. So not only is spirit real, but the problems with spirit are what underlie all other illnesses and difficulties. So, things might show up in the form of a physical problem or something mental or emotional, of patterns and relationships. And all of this is real in this dimension, but it's the consequence of something deeper. It's something at the level of the soul or the level of the spirit. And what this means from the shamanic kind of understanding is that, when we're born, we have a soul that comes into our body from somewhere. And it guides, it directs, it animates your body as you go through life. And then when you die, it leaves. And, different traditions have a different explanation or understanding of what happens then. Now, the thing is, during your lifetime, different things can happen to you. And these things can interfere with your connection with your soul. And that is what the shamanic understanding of the origin of any kind of illness or difficulty or problem is, that you have lost connection with some part of your soul. Now, there are two basic ways that you lose this connection. The first is that you take on psychic, energetic junk and stuff that's not yours. That's the left, what's called an intrusion. Spirit termites. And this interferes, it blocks, it becomes static and gets in the way. So you're just not fully connected with yourself, which weakens and diminishes you and then makes you vulnerable to things like viruses and bad luck and stuff like that. It also means that you're more vulnerable to people's hostility, their negative energy, and we're all affected by that. We're bathed, we live in a universe of energy and intentions and feelings. So, if you have angry or hostile people in your life, the kind of the old hippie term of a bad vibe is very real. And that kind of negative energy, being directed at you has an impact. And it doesn't even have to be directed at you. I mean, I'm sure we've all had this experience of, walking into a place where the vibe was bad, or you walk by someone who's in a bad mood and you can literally feel it. Now the thing is, you can take this on whether you're aware of it or not. And it's actually, kind of inevitable because we're surrounded by this stuff. So we just have to learn how to clean yourself of it and be protected of it. And part of the methods and techniques are to, strengthen power animals and spirit helpers and things to improve that. And there are also ways of, very powerful techniques for cleansing and detaching from this sort of negativity and this stuff. It's kind of like psychic flossing. And so that's one of the forms of work is one form of forms of healing is removing this junk that's in the way. The other one is the other way that people are disconnected or need healing is from soul loss, soul fragmentation. And this comes about because the soul has a self-protective mechanism. When it's threatened or shocked or endangered in any way, it leaves. And this is where the out-of-body stories come from. The soul has left the body. And it's now looking down at the accident or the assault or the hospital bed because it's not there to experience the pain or the threat, whatever it is that's going on. So that's the good news. Your soul is out there, it's up there, it's intact, it's safe. The bad news is when it's time to go back into the body, sometimes not all of it goes back in. Parts of you can just stay out there, and which leaves you feeling incomplete, feeling diminished, feeling weak. And so that's kind of the basic shamanic understanding of the origin of illness and what you need to do in terms of asking spirit for help. You don't have to diagnose it, but just that's sort of the nature of what kind of help is typically part of the healing process. Now, we're not going to be getting into healing per se in Be Your Own Shaman. The focus of the course is on divination and asking questions and getting answers, getting kind of guidance. That's the divination side of shamanism rather than the healing side. But I think it's important for people to kind of understand the big picture. And, when it comes to working with spirit helpers, people often think that, shamanism is this very dramatic stuff, this healing work. And some of it can be. But an awful lot of it is spiritual delivery or spiritual plumbing. You're moving something from here to there. You're picking up a soul part package from over here and carrying it over there. Or you're cleaning out the pipes. It really is, kind of that mundane in a way. Now, doing that is skill and practice, but conceptually, it's not brain surgery or even rocket science. It's this sort of very simple activity because the beauty and the power of shamanism is that you're not actually doing the work. Spirit's doing the work. And, that's sort of the heart of this work is there's a lovely saying that the bird of paradise flies to heaven on two wings. One of them is grace, and the other is self-effort. And we all know about self-effort. I mean, I think we live in a culture that we're good at self-effort, but grace is not so easy. And there's a funny joke about how many shamans does it take to change a light bulb? Well, only one, but the light bulb really has to want to change and to ask for help. That's the heart of this work, is going to spirit to ask for what you want, because we're surrounded by spirit helpers. I mean, just like me sitting in that room seeing all those angels. And spirit wants to help us. They're very compassionate. They're very concerned. They're very interested. They're very engaged. But they cannot help us unless we ask them for it. It's a matter of sort of spiritual autonomy or spiritual freedom. Just like, I can't ethically help you in any sphere until you ask me for it. Even if I was just a plumber, I can't just come into your house and start working on the pipes unless I've been invited. So it's even more so when it comes to, working at this level with spirit. So as I said, above all, this is sort of the direct experience and the direct connection of working with spirit. And what you're doing is you're stepping into something that's bigger than our ordinary reality, bigger than our ordinary minds. And this is what people, say again and again and again when they journey is you couldn't make this stuff up. And at the same time, people feel like, oh my God, this is just my imagination. I'm just making this stuff up. And it is, it is your imagination because you use your imagination to get started. But at a certain point, you discover from your own experience that you're not just making it up, that there's something, independent that's real out there that you're engaging with, that you're experiencing. And it is so much bigger than the human mind, which can sometimes cause a bit of a problem because, our mind's job is to predict and to understand and to control things. That's what it's evolved to do. And when we're walking around as a two-legged creature on the surface of the planet Earth, it's very important for the mind to do that. But when you close your eyes and listen to the drums and take a spirit journey into another dimension, your mind's role there is going to be quite different. You don't lose your mind. It's there. It's observing. It's witnessing. But it's going along for the ride. You still have choice. You still have will. Nothing happens in these dimensions without your agreeing to it. But it's like taking a trip on the river. You get to choose your boat. You get to choose where you point it and how you steer it and how you paddle, those sorts of things. But you don't get to control the current or the scenery. So when you step into shamanism, you are stepping into a very big river. And you have the ability to move around on this river and to ask for help and for guidance, but you do not control the river. So does that make sense in terms of the framework of things? So in a few moments we're going to talk about how we actually do this. But before that, I want to talk about divination, the other sort of half of shamanic practice and the heart of Be Your Own Shaman of the Course. So divination is asking questions, asking spirit for help and guidance. It's sort of about telling the future, but not really. It's asking for help to make sense of your path and of your life. And a big part of the course is going to be learning what are the types of questions you can ask spirit about, the questions about your life. Because, clients very often come to me to ask questions and to ask for help. And typically they come for one of two reasons. They want to make sense of their circumstances, to figure out what's going on, what to do next, that sort of a thing. So that's understanding, getting guidance, getting direction is the divination side of things. Or they want their circumstances to change. I've got a broken heart, I've got a bad back, I've got a health problem, and I want help changing that. So that changing the situation is more of a healing kind of a request. Now the thing is, when it comes to divination, you can ask spirit for guidance, but they will not tell you what to do. They won't tell you how to live your life, and so you have to be careful because we're always trying to trick spirit into telling us what to do. And a very common way would be someone coming to you and saying, should I or shouldn't I marry John? And that's not the way you can ask the question, because you're trying to, put the decision making on someone else. And spirit will not tell you how to live. So instead of asking, should I, you would ask something like, show me the essence of my relationship with John so I can better understand, what's going on and how to move forward. Or show me what would happen if I were to marry John. And then, you get back information in a variety of different ways. And it depends on kind of who you are and the nature of your spirit helpers. That's a relationship and a calibration that builds over time. But to give you an example of a divination question and journey, I was in a business situation with two people a couple of years ago, and we'd made a deal to work together, and we're working together on this project, and it looks good, all systems are go, and I'm starting to do my part of things. And I come home one day from work, and there's a message on the machine, and it says, don't bother coming in tomorrow, we found someone else. And I'm sitting there thinking, what just happened? And it was it was a nice packet of money too. So I went and journeyed. And I asked, please show me the essence of my relationship with person A and person B so I can understand what just happened. And almost instantly, I'm taken to the desert. And I'm looking down at two scorpions that have got their tails raised in the air. They're hissing under the sun and sort of sparring off of each other. So that was the two of them. And I'm this frog hopping over the sand dunes saying, this isn't the place for me. I need to go find a pond. And that picture showed me instantly and perfectly their personalities, their business styles, their values, the ways in which they got along with each other or didn't, and why the whole deal had just fallen apart. So that's, the nature of the divination process and of the types of questions you can answer and the ways in which spirit will answer. What we're going to be doing over the course of the 7 weeks is learning how to use first a live drum and then a recorded drum, to work with an intention, to journey to the lower world and the upper world, to ask questions of the teachers that you find there, and develop your relationship with them. And what's going to happen over the course of the 7 weeks is that you're going to learn 3 things, in addition to getting answers to your questions week by week or journey by journey. One, you're going to develop your skill, the skill of journeying, traveling to the upper world and to the lower world. So your skill is going to get better and better. The second thing you're going to learn is the geography of these 2 worlds, what the landscape is like, what the different spaces and rooms and places are, and what they have to offer you, what you can discover in each of them. Because everybody's geography and universe is unique and personal. And then what you're going to discover also is who is there, who's the cast of characters. What's the nature of the teachers for you in the lower world? What's the nature of the teachers for you in the upper world? And how you're going to work with them. And this is a constantly growing and expanding experience. So, if I were to sort of use a metaphor of this, I would say it's kind of like learning how to ride a bike. And by the end of the 7 weeks, you will know how to ride your own bicycle. You'll be comfortable going uphill and downhill. And you will have met some really, really good bicycle riders who are going to teach you everything else you need to know. Because that's the heart of this process, that you can do courses and workshops and things like that, and they will accelerate your process. But the real teaching, the heart of the experience comes from your spirit teachers. And that's my goal in the course, is to get you on your own bicycle and out on the road. The way in which a workshop like this can accelerate the process is in 2 ways. There's a power that comes from working with the group's collective energy that can make the journeys, deeper and more focused. And at the same time, you in effect are borrowing help from the spirit teachers and helpers that have been cultivated by me or whoever is holding the circle. But I need to make this really, really clear. That's just something that accelerates or catalyzes your learning. It does not substitute for your own direct connection with spirit helpers. And it definitely does not make you dependent on the person holding the circle. And any time you run into someone who is trying to create that kind of dependency, walk away. That is not shamanism, that's religion or a cult. Because the whole beauty and the whole power of shamanism, and I think it's also the reason why it has been, shunned and stamped out and attacked in so many places, is that this connection with spirit helpers belongs to everybody. Nobody has a lock or a stranglehold on it. It's not like, church or anything institutionalized where you have to go through some kind of hierarchy to get at the goodies. Spirit belongs to everybody. And, that's my goal in this work, in whatever form it takes, whether it's one-to-one this evening, is to expand your abilities and your skills to help you connect with your spirit helpers, your spirit powers, so you can work directly and go get what you need. Okay, so let's talk about taking a journey, the reason we're all here. Let's do the thing or talk about the thing that makes everything happen. So journeying is what shamans do. It can be called soul flight, spirit flight, journeying. It's the way in which a shaman, aka you, in training, go from here to there. And the process of journeying it's a 3-part process. You start by stating your intention, which is an act of will and focus. Then you expand your mind using drums and imagination, and then you actually take the journey. You step into the mystery. So I said the first thing that you do is this act of will. You state your intention. This is the instruction, the command. I'm going to go to the upper world or the lower world or the middle world. I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this. So this is letting spirit and your unconscious know what you want to do. It's just like if you're going to walk out the front door and you don't have any kind of intention, you'll just wander the streets. which could be fine. But if you go out thinking, I'm going to the store to get the chocolate ice cream cone, that guides you. So when you get to an intersection, you know which way to turn. And if at some point you get distracted, you can think, oh, what was I doing? Oh, that's right. Yeah, ice cream. So the intention is doing the same thing. It guides and shapes your journey. And for a training vert journey, we use a very, very simple intention. My intention is to go to my place in nature, meet the gatekeeper, and return. There's a couple of things that are important to know about this. One, this is just a practice. It's a very simple little journey. It's learning how to drive the car on Sunday afternoon. You're in the parking lot, and you just want to see, how the brakes work and the steering wheels work. You're not trying to do anything dramatic. You're not going out into the road and mixing with traffic or anything like that. You're just going to state the intention out loud 3 times, go to this place in nature, see who or what is there, and then come back. So the way I hold my circles is my job is to give you a good, clear intention. I state the intention out loud, and you repeat it back after me 3 times. This does a couple of things. It builds the energy of the group. It declares out into the universe, we're going to go here, and we're going to do this. So my intention is to go to my place in nature, meet the gatekeeper, and return. Then you'll close your eyes, put the blindfold on, and I will start drumming at a very particular frequency, which goes like this. That's a theta rhythm. It's about 4 to 7 cycles a second. And it's one of the sort of important brain states that we go through as we fall in and out of sleep. And it's characterized by a deep physical stillness, but you're mentally very, very alert. It's also, interestingly, the brainwave that children are in for the early part of their lives until about age 6 or 7, which is the kind of what the psychologists call this magical thinking state, where they, quote, see imaginary friends. And, they're very, very open to certain kinds of experiences and completely unable to have other kinds of experiences. So the drum is what's doing the work. So the drum is carrying you. The drum actually does the work. And what it does is the brain, as I said, the brain wakes up in this frequency state, and very, very interesting things happen to our brain in that state, and very quickly. Michael Harner, who I mentioned earlier, is this anthropologist that I've trained and studied with, and he's largely responsible for introducing or reviving shamanism in the modern world. He started working in the 60s and 70s with different shamanic peoples, and he studied a lot of different cultures, both in the literature and in the field, and identified these core practices, methods that you just see again and again and again. And the drum is the one that you see everywhere. About 90% of shamanic cultures use drums to alter their awareness. And anyway, so he's been journeying for 40 or 50 years, and at one point he was taking part in some brain research where they were studying the brainwave patterns of shamans and meditators and anybody who did any kind of consciousness or brain manipulation activity. And it was interesting because what they discovered was that all the advanced and experienced people who do this sort of stuff go to a very similar, pretty much the same part of the brain wakes up, and you see very similar patterns. What the part of the brain that some people have nicknamed the God brain. If you think about the brain, the lower back part of the brain, the reptilian brainstem, is the purely kind of instinctive part. And then the center of the brain, the limbic emotional brain, is the kind of dog or monkey brain. And then towards the front, we have the newer part of the brain, the neocortex, the engineer planner brain. And then right up at the front is the sort of superfront, or what's called the God brain, that sees these big patterns. And this seems to be the part of the brain that has these kind of mystical altered states. So when they studied these things, what they saw was that as I said, all these people go to this place. What was quite extraordinary, though, was that he goes to the place where the Dalai Lama goes, that Zen Buddhists and experienced meditators go. But the big difference was that when the drumming starts, his brain gets to that state in about 6 minutes, whereas a Zen Buddhist can take 6 hours of sitting in zazen to finally reach that state. So the shamans have discovered, after tens of thousands of years of very direct practice, that the brain does, extraordinary things. So the drumming starts, and then you use your imagination. You imagine yourself leaving here, leaving where you are, leaving your body, and going to your place in nature, which is important. Your place in nature is a real, literal place in nature that you know. And it's nice if it's special to you. I mean, it doesn't have to be, Machu Picchu or somewhere exotic like that, but it's nice that it's a place you know and have a good feeling for, that feels safe and kind of right to you. But it could just be a corner of your backyard, favorite tree in a park, anywhere that feels special and real and known to you. Because no matter where you are in the world, you want to know where this place is, so you know sort of conceptually how to get to it, what direction it is from where you are, because you always want to start with what's known and where you can get to it. So, for example, let's say I've picked a favorite tree in Hyde Park. The drumming starts. I've got the blindfold on. My eyes are closed. I'm relaxed. I imagine myself leaving my body, flying out the window, going over the city, and there I am at the park, and I go down, and I'm standing by the tree, and there I am. So your place in nature is the front door to all of your journey experiences. You always go here. You go here, you open the door, you have the experience, you come back to the door, you close the door, and then return, to the here and now into your body. Now, this is a very important discipline and practice, and there are two reasons for this. One is that no matter where you are in the world, if you're in London or New York or wherever you are, Bali, we're going to some pretty exotic places, you know what direction you need to go from there. And you quite literally just sort of imagine yourself flying out the window and kind of pivoting into the direction of wherever your thing is and heading off, kind of like something out of Harry Potter. And so you don't get lost. And the reason this is important, this sort of getting lost or knowing where you are, is that the shamanic world has three layers to it. The middle world is normal, ordinary reality where we live. And then above that is the upper world, Jack and the Beanstalk, non-ordinary reality, Wizard of Oz. And below that is the lower world, Alice in Wonderland and going down. Now the thing is, we can journey to all of these three dimensions, but the rules in the dimensions are a little bit different, so you need to know where you are so you know which rule book you're working with. Now what's important is that the upper world and the lower world, which is what we're going to be working with in the course, in all of our journeys, are transcended realms. So what that means is that when you're in the upper world and the lower world, every spirit you meet is by, definition, transcended. It's impossible for them to be lost or confused. But that's not true of the middle world, because the middle world is this world. And when you journey in the middle world, when you alter your awareness and start moving around on this dimension, you run into the spiritual aspect of everything that is here. So you can run into the spirit of a flu virus. You can run into the spirit of an angry neighbor. You can run into the spirit of a dead person who doesn't know they're dead. So it's just important to know where you are so you know, the neighborhood and the rules that you work by. So you go to your place in nature, and the purpose of this journey is you're going to go there and just look around. See if you have a gatekeeper. If you do, engage with them, hang out with them, and then come back. Now what's important about the gatekeeper is that some traditions are very, very insistent that you have to have a gatekeeper. You can't go anywhere until you get permission from the gatekeeper. And other traditions don't mention a gatekeeper at all. So what I say is just, be open to the possibility. See if you have one. Because if you do, they're really helpful. They're very, very useful. They give you all sorts of advice. They take you places. Usually they're saying, relax, calm down, don't be so nervous. Sometimes they might say, well, hey, wait a second. This is a big journey today. You need to have kind of a better attitude. But usually, we tend to be nervous, us humans. They're saying things like, relax already. You worry too much. So you're just going to go there to see if you have a gatekeeper, and then you're going to return. When it's time to return, I will play a callback signal, which is I stop the main drumming, and then I do 7 beats. And I repeat that 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And when you hear that, it's time to come back. So no matter what's going on, you look around, you say, okay, I'm sorry, I've got to go now. Thanks so much. Goodbye. I'll be back later. And then I drum very, very quickly for about 45 seconds, and you retrace your steps. So for example, let's say I went to my place in Hyde Park, I meet my gatekeeper, we take a little bit of a walk. So when I hear the callback, I walk back to where I started. That's the front door. So I want to close the door, fly through the air, back into the room, back into my body. So that's the process. Now in terms of the experience, journeying is a very, very unique and very personal experience. And so that's the other big thing that you're going to be learning is how is it that you do a journey? Because when you hear other people's journeys, you're going to hear quite a wide variety of styles and experiences. And the thing is, as I said, everybody does this differently because, in this tradition, the rules are that there are no rules. There is no pope. And there are no expectations. Whatever happens to you is exactly what happens. And whatever happens is perfect. Whatever happens is exactly what needed to happen for you. This is the most bespoke and custom and personal practice I'm aware of, because everything that happens is shaped around sort of who you are and what you need. So, for example, you might be someone who really, really loves the Lion King. So you might find yourself in a Lion King landscape, engaging with Lion King characters, because that's the clothing Spirit put on for you. I mean, I get a lot of characters from Lord of the Rings. Now, I honestly don't think Gandalf, I honestly don't think Spirit looks like Gandalf. But those books are really important to me, so that's the costume the Spirit puts on for me. So what everybody's going to discover is what Spirit is for them and how these dimensions present themselves to them. Now, the extremes are that some people are very, very visual, and they come back describing something that's like a movie. But just because that's their experience doesn't mean you're going to have that experience. So as I said, the people over here, it's an IMAX movie, sound, camera, action, lights. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have people who are very kinesthetic and very physical, and they never see a thing. It's all in their body. They'll journey for 20 years and never see a thing. It's just something, it's a felt experience. They just, when they close their eyes, they know they're leaving their body. They know they're sort of flying over the city. They know they're in this place. They know they're going down. But it's just a known, it's a felt thing. And then it can be anything in between. You can see the Technicolor movie at one point, and then you can be looking through a keyhole at this very, vague image. Or you're just aware of something over there, and then it kind of shimmers into focus. And then it's a person. Or it's just colored blobs against a background, or it's a kind of a knowing, a voice in your head. And it can be all of these things. It can shift over time. Or you can have all these things in one journey. So the more you can have yourself be like a camera and just take it all in, whatever it is that's happening, just take it in. Now, it's not practical to do this in a group setting, so we'll be journeying quietly or silently. But when you journey at home, you can just talk out loud and record yourself as you're doing the journey. That's what I do. I just kind of talk out loud. I'm going down the hallway. I see this. I see that. That's happening. So-and-so says this. I say that. I ask, are you my whatever? Why is that happening? Something in my left ear. And I just blab it all out. This does two things. One, there's an amazing amount of detail and experiences and information taking place in a journey. So if you're just, blabbing and recording it, you get it all. Two, very important, it gets your mind out of the way. You're not sitting there thinking, I wonder why, or trying to figure stuff out. You're so busy having the experience and recording it, you can always figure it out later. If you try figuring it out in the middle, it gets in the way. But the other thing that's very important about this process, if you do it this way, you're in an altered state when you're having the journey. So to the extent that you report from within the altered state, you are getting a different level and quality of information. I'm sure you've had the experience of, coming back from a dream that was, amazingly vivid for about the first 9 seconds, and then it faded, very, very quickly. Well, this is very similar to that. So in the course, you'll be developing through practice your ability to remember and bring back as much as possible, write it down in as much detail as possible. But if you do it at home, I really encourage you to practice narrating it out loud. I think you'll be amazed at how much information is there. So that was a massively long introduction to, if we were in person, would be about a 6-minute journey. But I wanted to, give you a very thorough grounding and background in how this happens, why it happens, what it's good for, and what we're going to be doing over the 7 weeks of the course. This is like that scene in The Matrix, where he said, you've got the red pill and you've got the blue pill. And if you take this pill, you go back to your ordinary life and reality, and you never remember what happened here. And if you take this pill, you're never going to be the same. Well, journeying and shamanism and connecting with the reality of spirit will change you. It's changed me. Now, for me, the biggest change has been, and it might sound crazy to say this, but I'm not afraid to die anymore. It doesn't mean I'm ready to do it. There's still a lot of stuff I want to do with my life. But the actual thought of death no longer scares me. I have this visceral sense, this feeling, this kind of knowing that it's just another way of being, and it's nothing to be afraid of. And then there's also this sense of, that I'm part of patterns, and the spirits that are watching over, and there are spirits that are watching over and giving advice and giving guidance. And, it's true that shit still happens. I still worry about paying the rent and, hurt feelings and all that kind of ordinary stuff. But at the same time, deep in the background, there's a very strong sense of I'm not in this by myself anymore. And that changes everything. And that's ultimately what I wish for anybody who comes through these doors and does this work. That you walk out with something that is not a faith. Once you know and have this experience that we are not alone, and in fact, the amount of support and concern and love and wisdom that is dying to come into your life, that just wants an invitation, is just mind-boggling. And it changes everything. So thank you all for being here tonight, and I'll see you all next week, actually, at the start of the course. So be well. Take care.